Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today it is time to have a look at another devlog for War Thunder. This is for the next update, obviously Danger Zone, and we've seen a little bit of its effect when it comes to the dev server. Of course, it is Napalm, something which is kind of surprising to come to the game, if I'm honest with you. I thought it would come eventually, I just kind of didn't know when. But now I suppose, since we have a bunch of vehicles that it can be added to, why not add it now? And also adds into some of the themes that we've seen in the previous updates with certain Vietnam vehicles. But even though Napalm itself is more known, I suppose, from the Vietnam era, Napalm actually appeared in the US in 1942. It is basically a mixture of fuel with some gelling agents of various compositions that increase the burning time and temperature, and also endow the mixture with the ability to stick to various surfaces, including water. And the first military use of incendiary bombs was actually in 1944 in France, when it was being liberated by the Allied forces. So this has been around for a long time, which means that it might be mounted on a ton of vehicles when it comes to the game. The question is its effectiveness and how much use it will be compared to a standard conventional bomb. But at least at the same time, with the improved fire effects, which they've done over the last year or so, and also with the addition of the longer burning time, which we saw on the dev server, maybe it might have a bit more of a use, or at least it'll look nice in cinematics, which, you know, is quite good. Generally, when it comes to War Thunder, you don't always need something to actually be that effective. You just need it to garner a different playstyle, and also to just add something slightly different to the game. Doesn't have to break the game, doesn't have to be overpowered, just has to be kind of interesting. And I feel that's what Napalm brings when it comes to the game itself. The actual nations that are going to get access to it in Update Danger Zone are America, German, Soviet, Israeli, and Chinese aircraft. These will use some types of American and Soviet-made incendiary bombs, and they also say in the future will add new types of incendiary bombs for aviation of different gaming nations. There are certain ones which are pretty unique to use. You know, I think the Swedish aircraft with the A-21s, they could actually drop their drop tanks and change them into, I suppose, kind of tiny little fire bombs. So I feel like a lot of nations in the game could get access to napalm or firebombs or incendiary bombs in general, and the real question is how effective will they be, and also how cool will it look, because that's pretty much the vast majority of using these things. So napalm will work just like any other secondary weapon. Basically, you have to research a modification, you'll get access to the bombs, and then you'll be able to use them. Simple as that, really. And even if napalm is useless in the game, this does mean that it does have a little bit of a use. One of the things that is nice about them adding new mechanics, even if they're seen as not as powerful as the old ones, it means that it lessens your modification costs of the ones which are useful. The more bombs a vehicle has, the more rockets a vehicle has, especially when it comes to a ground pounder or when it comes to an air superiority fighter, which you want to try and turn into a cast plane. The nicest thing is to give it more and more and more mods, because it makes the individual mods themselves cheaper. Now, we're seeing this already on the dev server with stuff like the IL-28SH, and I'm sure we'll see it with many other vehicles as well at the same time. So it just makes it simpler to research stuff. Like for ground vehicles, for example, there are certain mods on ground vehicles that aren't very useful, or aren't as useful, I should say, as others. So therefore, what you can do is you can use them to, you know, kind of grind at the end, so you get some bonuses once you complete the row of modifications, and also at the same time, just because you can also, you can do the other thing, which is, of course, making it reduces, as I said, the modification costs of the useful ones, so you can get to a highly effective state much easier. It would be nice if vehicles in ground or air had access to millions of modifications, because it means like the individual ones would be super simpler to research, the actual useful ones. So I'm not mad about this being added, even if you're not going to see it too much, because it basically means that it'll be easier to grind the mods that you actually need in the game itself. The other thing to also note is the Incendiary Bombs they basically work exactly the same as high explosive bombs. So you drop them, and then, they spread over an area after impact, and they have a little bit of an explosive mass to them, which kind of spreads the stuff around the place and then creates like a circle of effect, I suppose is the best way of putting it. If the aircraft is equipped with the ballistic bomb calculator, you'll also be able to see the drop points in RB and SB, so once again, same mechanics as the standard bombs, and upon impact, an incendiary mixture is spilled over an area and ignited. The burning mixture sticks to the surfaces in the location, including wet mud, puddles, and even water surfaces, so you don't have to worry too much about dropping it in water. It'll still work. And napalm will deal damage to open-top vehicles, affecting the crew member in them. It will also attack light armored vehicles, and tires of wheeled vehicles are burned as if they were on fire as well, and a vehicle will receive some damage every second. The damage to ships and boats when napalm spills on them is similar to the fire damage that it can get, and if aircraft get hit by a napalm bomb, then they will just die immediately. It's basically how it goes. Also, the ignited mixture continues to burn for some time, which will char trees and grass, and if the open-topped or wheeled vehicles drive into the area during a fire, they will receive similar to fire damage. So, this is the thing, right? When you have a look at how effective this is going to be, it's kind of hard to think about it in a way that it's actually going to really change the dynamic. The best scenario for this thing is, you get in a plane, you're held up with a ton of fire bombs, and then for some reason there is an army of open-topped light vehicles which are running to a cap. So what you do is you place a bomb which is just off the cap before they're running into it, and then they run through it. That's kind of the best case scenario for this thing. The worst case scenario, which will happen 90 to 95% of the time, is you'll face stuff like MBTs, or you'll face stuff which isn't open-topped or isn't wheeled, and is tracked, and you won't really be able to do any damage to them. Whereas if you just brought a bomb, like a normal conventional bomb, you would be able to just kill them. And even with light tanks or wheeled vehicles, you could also just kill them in general. So for me, the effectiveness of this thing, not too high. There are certain loadouts where you can take both, though. So you can take, the fire bombs and also conventional bombs. Maybe they'll see use there. But I feel like in general, in order to set up for a bombing run, especially at the higher echelons of the game, which is where we've found them so far, on the MiG-23, IL-28SH, MiG-27, and also the Thunder Chief, I feel like it's too much time for the setup to actually bring these over conventional ones. So what I mean by this is, in ground forces, you spawn about 15k away from the battlefield. In naval forces, you can't use any of these vehicles because they're too high BR. So it literally doesn't matter. But when it comes to ground forces, you are 15 kilometers away from the battle, and by the time you get to the battle, especially in some vehicles, the actual game might have changed a decent amount. And, the light tanks that you thought were going somewhere have now either been killed, or maybe they're in a different place and they've already done their objective. The timing that is going to be required to make this thing useful is very, very tight. And that is definitely something which should not be disregarded. Is it nice to see napalm? Yes, of course it is. More mechanics and more interesting things in War Thunder will always be praised. But at the same time, is it going to be that useful? No. At least it'll look pretty, though. And I look forward to seeing it as that beautiful sight. Anyway, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Nicholas Richardson, Elove Goat, Pyman675, Winter Scientist, Merciless Reaper, Jerry Prevolt, Megadino King, Orange Tail, Teddy, John Ryman, Universe, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Moxie, B. Young, Uncle Bean, Sem Arslan, Derek R., Bareen, Lafouche, and Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.